Hello and welcome to Christopher Closeup. I'm Father Tom McSweeney and I'm so glad that you've joined us. According to a recent Newsweek article, there are 31 million Latinos living in the United States, and that number is expected to keep Hispanic faces and voices in the media doesn't reflect that increasing number. Our guests today are doing their best to introduce Latino people and culture to is an accomplished actor who also hosts a new and unique talk show called Amigos. The other is the president of HTN, which produces Nuestra Familia and Our Family for weekly television. Please welcome to Christopher Closeup, Jorge Pupo and Roberto Gutierrez. Jorge, I didn't say that right. It's
Jorge Pupo.
Pupo. Oh, good.
I'm so happy to be here.
Now, my Spanish is not good, but I'm so glad you're here because we're going to address a lot of issues, especially the issue of the Latino presence or lack of Latino presence in the media. But first of all, let's talk about your show.
Yes.
Entre Amigos. What's the objective behind that show?
Well, Entre Amigos is trying to bring to mainstream America the wide diversity of the Latino population, our culture, our heritage, our different faces, the fact that it's very difficult to pinpoint a Latino or say, oh, he's Latino, he's not Latino, because we all look very different. We come from Asia, we come from Africa, we come from, South America, the Caribbean. We are a rainbow unto ourselves, and it's difficult to find us.
Why do this show right now?
Why do the show right now?
What's the urgency of doing this program?
Well, the fact that there are none, I would say, well, maybe now a couple of shows where they present Latinos who are prominent Latinos speaking English. So our original idea was to bring celebrities, people that the mainstream may not know who they are, but they are very important people in our lives, speaking English about their lives, their successes, and where they see our culture going in the next millennium.
We're going to want to be talking about that. What's the reaction been of the Latino audience?
Unbelievable. I get faxes, emails, calls. People that are not Latinos, now they want to be Latinos.
But
just to be on my show.
So you've had a positive response from the non-Hispanic audience.
Unbelievable
as well.
response.
How do you account for that?
I think it's the fact that, I mean, right now, people want to be Latinos because, I mean, the music, the fashion, our foods, our incredible places to vacation. And I think America is finally ready to accept us as positive role models, as we've seen in Newsweek, Time Magazine, In Style Magazine with Antonio Banderas and Melanie Griffith. I mean, we are actually saying we are here to stay.
And you're part of the mainstream?
I think so.
Jorge, I'd like to share a portion of your program with our audience right now. In this clip, talent agent Wendy Curiel and an acclaimed actress Miriam Colon offer their views on the representation of Latinos in television and film.
Latino visibility is on the rise on television, and positive role models are certainly out there. Do you feel you're doing something to make that happen?
I believe so. I mean, I encourage Latino actors to perfect their craft. I support my clients as much as I can. And I think that what I find is that sometimes there are producers who don't quite know, because they're not used to dealing with Latino talent, that because of the years that I've had in the business, not only as an agent but as a casting director as well at one point, I'm able to fully understand what their dilemma is at times. So I feel that being Latina actually helps a lot.
What is your perception of the images of Latino women in the media today?
Sad, you know. There is no recognition of the fact that the Latinos are very great variety, a great rich gamma of, number one, intellects, also racial attitudes, etc. And so far it has been very disappointing, the way that our women are portrayed, and our men in the North American media. I think it is up to us to correct that.
Jorge, with your interviews, you're addressing the image of Latinos in the culture, as well as trying to enhance that image. And Roberto, with Nuestra Familia, you've been doing the same thing for a number of years. Tell us about the program.
Well, since 1982, we started HTN Productions, that was an organization dedicated exclusively to the production of documentary-style films on the Hispanic community in this country. Which
HTN meaning Hispanic Telecommunications Network. Yes.
We are Hispanic. We're not into telecommunications, and we're probably not considered a network other than a network of people. That's how I like to describe what we do. We started as an organization dedicated exclusively to this kind of production because we felt that within the Catholic Church experience, there just were not enough sufficient programming available to the Latino community in this country. And more than just a show, it is a ministry, it's an effort, it's an evangelization movement to try to reach Latino Catholics with messages of hope and proclaiming good values and good news in all of our lives.
And you do this vis-a-vis stories,
Absolutely.
real lived stories of faith and culture. What are your favorite kinds of stories?
I really prefer stories of faith and family. I think those are the things that Latinos are known for. If you had to find one characteristic that was prevalent in all of our cultures, in all the Latino culture, it would be stories of faith and family. We know that predominantly Latinos are Catholic. That's changing, but historically we have those kinds of stories that speak to a common faith. And we have stories of family that for us is valued above everything else.
Indeed. Roberto, I've been watching your program for a long time, and I've been enjoying the English version as well. And what I love about your program is the way that you go out into the field, and he gets right in there to know the people in their own environment. And so right now I'd like to share a portion of Roberto's Nuestra Familia with you. The following clip, by the way, explores a parish in Brownsville, Texas, and the way one parishioner is helping to spread God's word.
Brownsville is home to snowbirds, retirees who have left the northern cold for warmer climes. Dina Ansaldúa and her family lived in Chicago for 32 years, where she was an active member of her church. But because of her husband's illness, the family moved to Texas, to Brownsville, in 1992.
I felt I should go to the church and talk to the priest to see what I could do. I just didn't feel right not serving the church in some way. The priest was very kind. He told me I could keep on being as active as I used to be. He gave me his blessing.
Dina looked for ways to fit in and participate in her new church.
He gave me permission to start my own catechism classes. Since I live 7 miles from the city, I started the classes here in my home. I had so many kids they wouldn't fit in the house.
The work of educating the children has become a full-time ministry, expending both Dina's time and her family's resources.
My husband knew that the cold weather and the rain would soon be upon us, so he took some of his savings and built me a small chapel. When he finished, he said, "This is for your kids."
Roberto, it's wonderful to see a program that's emphasizing the good that people are doing. How has producing your own program affected your own perception of the Latino culture?
Well, I think producing the program is more than being affected by it. It's an extension of our culture. It's a way of taking what we know from childhood and sharing it with the rest of the world. It's something that's inherent in, at least in my own family experience and in my own religious experience. It was a calling, if you will, for what I needed to do in my life.
It's kind of putting your faith in action through a
Absolutely.
skill that you have. You know, I'm tossing around the word Latinos, and that's probably an injustice because I'm making a general statement about a diverse group of people. When we say Latinos, how is that word properly understood in terms of the different groups?
Well, I mean, you can say Latino, you can say Hispanic, you can say Ibero-American, Latin American. There are so many ways to express, you know, who we are, our language, our culture, our heritage.
And the unity among Latinos, is there such a thing as a unity, and is there a disunity in the Latino culture?
I think, first off, I hear Latino on the east and west coast, and then Hispanic is still pretty much southwest, south Texas, and then up through Chicago. But the unity that we share, I think, certainly the commonality in our language, and it's something that brings us together. When we meet each other for the first time, the common denominator becomes we happen to speak the same language, and it happens to bring that familiarity face-to-face very quickly for us, and it's something that does bring people together.
The fact that we're immigrants. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all right.
The fact that we're immigrants. I mean, many of us have been born here. I mean, I was born in Cuba, but I mean, when we meet here in America, we may speak Spanish, but we may be from Bolivia or Chile or Paraguay or Spain. So we have something in common right away, and it's usually exile. So we have a struggle that we've encountered in order to get here. So there's
where some people chose to come here, some people were exiled and came here, some people were found here, if you will, when the borders moved south. But in each case, within the Latino community, I think that there's that sense of journeying, and there's that movement, and there's a constant movement, and it's something that really drives us forward and makes us look forward to the future.
And there is a lot of hope among the Hispanic and the Latino in this country, in the journey through the various businesses and the various professions. I'm reminded of an op-ed piece from Newsweek in which Christy Haubegger, the publisher of Latina magazine, wrote, "Spanish was the first European language spoken on this continent, which is why we live in places like Los Angeles, Colorado, and Florida rather than the angels, colored and flowered."
Absolutely. I mean,
Jorge, Roberto, yes.
You have Fray Junipero Serra, who founded all those missions in the late 1800s, the end of that 1800s, and then you have Hernandez Soto, who I believe discovered the Mississippi, and you have, it's funny because a lot of Americans don't think of Spanish as a link in their lives. But if we were to look back to 1776, King Carlos III sent the first monetary unit used in this country was the Spanish, the Spanish coat of arms.
Well, a whole generation before Plymouth Rock, Latinos, Spaniards were here in this country, 1583 in the first settlement in West Texas, which was Isleta at the time. So you have the entire southwest, all the way to the west, settled before the Pilgrims were even preparing the Thanksgiving dinner.
There's a tradition that reaches back beyond that.
We are all Latinos.
Tell us, you said you were from Cuba. Just a little bit about your background.
Oh yes, I was born in Cuba, and we left in 1968, went to Spain, lived there for a couple of years, then we came to New York, went to Rhode Island. That was my second experience with Franciscan priests. In Spain, I had studied with some Jesuit priests and Franciscan priests, and then from there we moved to West New York, New Jersey, then Puerto Rico.
Talk about a journey.
Oh,
quite
absolutely.
a journey. Roberto, what about you? Where did you grow up?
My father's a Mexican immigrant. He came over to South Texas in the late 50s and married my mother, who was a South Texan for many generations. I grew up in San Antonio, was born there and still there.
Why did you choose a career in the media, especially the way you fashioned it in a way that really celebrates your heritage?
That's right. Well, it's more like the career chose me. I was involved in Spanish language media right out of college. I went to work for the Oblate Fathers, who were producing the first Spanish language Catholic newspaper called El Visitante Dominical, and promoted that magazine to become one of the leading Catholic magazines for Latinos way back in the late 70s, early 80s. Out of that extension was the Nuestra Familia television show, which is, like I said, it's an extension of the kind of the cultural and religious and family heritage that I've gotten over the years.
Jorge, yourself, career in media.
Well, gosh, I mean, I went to college to become a doctor,
We all did.
And then, I had always loved the theater, so I went to NYU, and when I graduated from NYU, basically they gave me a list of restaurants where I was supposed to work. And I said, no way, So I started working in the film department, signing out all kinds of film equipment, then got involved in documentaries and filmmaking, commercials with people I still, up to this day, still work with.
Well, I feel like I've locked arms with you because I'm so delighted that you decided to be in the media. And when we come back, I would like to share with you some of the discussion that we've been kind of skirting around about stereotypes that Latinos have to deal with. And how we can deal with that in an effective way and overcome it. But first, here's a message that the Christophers would like to share with you.
Speaking out is not only a right, it's a responsibility. To express your ideas clearly, state your point, give an example, repeat your point, and call for an action. For these and many other tips, send for Make Your Voice Heard. In Spanish, that's Haga Oír Su Voz. Mail your name, address, and zip code to the Christophers, New York, New York, 10017. Make Your Voice Heard will be sent to you in English or Spanish without cost or obligation. So write to the Christophers, New York, New York, 10017.
Welcome back to Christopher Closeup and our look at the representation of Latinos in the media. With us are Jorge Pupo, producer and host of Entre, Amigos, or Among Friends, and joining him is Roberto Gutierrez, the president of HDN and producer of Nuestra Familia and Our Family. Jorge, as a Latino actor, what kind of parts are you offered?
Well, I can't say that I've been a subject of much stereotype. I mean, recently I played the role of Napoleon for an English commercial for phones, which you know, aired all over the United States. It does not.
Hispanic,
you know, and you know, I've played my share of bad guys. You know, most recently I went to an audition and I actually got up and I said to the casting director, you know, thank you very much, but I don't think I'm right for this role, and I walked out.
Why?
Because
you found it offensive?
I found it offensive because, I mean, not the fact that the role was a painter, but the fact that when I suggested changes in the script so that the guy would speak proper English, she said, no, you have to say it like that, you know, because that's the way it was written. I said, well, but he does not speak proper English. I think he should speak proper English. And I just got so upset, you know, because they just don't understand. The writers.
Are Latino actors and actresses stereotyped in the characters they're asked to represent?
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of that on just mainstream television still after all these years. I remember there's a talk show on network television that is late at night, and I won't mention the name of it, but there was a skit on that talk show called Things Are Funnier in Spanish. And I had to ask myself, why are things funnier in Spanish? Because they do the whole stereotypical Pancho with the big sombrero and the drink, you know, tequila drinking, and that's supposed to be somehow representative of a whole segment of our Hispanic community, and that's just not real. Well, I wrote off a letter and I said, you know, let's just stop that silliness. That's just not. That's not.
It
what's
was
going on.
funny once. I mean, you put the bananas on Carmen Miranda's head. You know, it was funny for a while. You know, you get the bad guys with the sombrero and the mustache. But I think stereotypes occur because of lack of knowledge, you know, because of ignorance.
Well, what is being done? What is being done to overcome stereotyping by the actors and by the producers themselves, or industry-wide?
Well, everybody's talking about.
Yes, they are.
Everybody, you know, there's been a big brownout with the big networks.
Explain a little bit more for our friends who may not know.
There were no positive Latino role models in their full lineup, and right away they started, you know, writing in new roles. But still the roles that are being written are not based on reality, because the writers are usually white from the, you know, the Midwest, and they have no experience with Latinos. So the roles they're going to write for us are still going to be very limited.
Ironically, 45% of the movie-going public right now is Latino. And yet, last year, 45% of the movie-going public is Latino. And yet, last year, there were no films made about Latinos anywhere.
There were some done, I mean, like La Familia Perez, the Mambo Kings, but they were directed by non-Latinos, so the films were a failure.
How can the general public play a role in overcoming stereotyping, encouraging a more accurate picture of what's going on?
Well, we're certainly seeing it in the music industry, where the crossover artists that started in Spanish are now doing more in English, and there's this kind of bridging, and it's selling. So as soon as it starts selling, people will start to create an awareness for it.
Absolutely.
Are economic factors giving Latinos more of a voice today?
Absolutely. I believe, I was reading an article, the Miami Herald, there was Mimi Whitehall, I believe. She said that if Latinos were taken as a whole in the United States, the U.S. Hispanic population, we would rank 14th in the world if we were taken as a nation. I mean, we're talking $450 billion. That's the buying power that we have.
It's been suggested that in prior generations of Hispanic immigrants that there was more of an impetus to downplay the Latino heritage. Do you agree with that? And
well, absolutely. I remember my mother's stories when we were growing up in South Texas, that if you even spoke Spanish in schools, you were expelled or you were suspended or beaten. And that
See,
was
that's new information for me.
that was prevalent in the 30s and 40s when discrimination was just rampant throughout our country, and Latinos were forced into assimilating and forgetting their culture. And if you wanted to get a job, well, then you better speak English, and there was no choice.
And because of the turnaround, at least there's a cultural shift going on. We seem to get the sense that the Hispanic community is moving to rediscover their roots and to emphasize those.
All of a sudden we're feeling proud that we're Latinos.
Yes,
we're not hiding the fact that we're Latinos anymore, because we have accepted our importance and our contributions to this country.
And look what's happening just when we travel around doing our film documentary work. We've been to places in Illinois and Iowa and Nebraska, in the Midwest, where towns that were dying because industry moving away are being now taken over by Latino communities, migrant workers coming in and rebuilding and rebirthing these very towns that at one point didn't let them in to even have a cup of coffee in the diner. Now they own the diner.
Yes, of course. Religious faith, and family, of course, but if we could stay with religious faith, for the importance of religious faith in the Latino culture. Could you talk to that? And, you know, I suspect in a way that doesn't stereotype it. Is it an authentic expression?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, most of us are Christians, even though, I mean, I know in Cuba there was a very large Jewish population. But, I mean, faith, I think, plays a very important part, especially for immigrants. I mean, you leave your country, you come here with a suitcase, and faith that things will come out the proper way. I mean, I know when I did Entre Amigos, I had never done a TV show before. But when I started calling people, everybody showed up. Everybody was happy that we were doing this. I didn't know where I was going to go with it.
It was part of your confidence to even get involved in creating that kind of concept.
But faith is an integrated value in the culture. It's not, as opposed to American culture, if you can call it American culture, within the Latino community, faith is part and parcel of who we are versus something we just do on Sundays. If you look at the language and if you talk to somebody for any given amount of time, you will hear faith phrases and expressions just snuck into the language. If I ask Jorge, you know, I'm going to go to the airport later to catch a flight, si Dios quiere, if God wills it. And it just becomes part of the parlance. And that is what carries us forward and what we believe is an integral part, a manifestation of our faith in action, even in the everyday way that we talk with one another.
You know, we can also talk in the same respect about family and the importance of family in the Hispanic communities and so forth. What role models would the Hispanic community be looking for in today's culture, especially for their kids?
Well, obviously, we make a living and we make a ministry out of promoting the role of family and parents and parenting. And now in our culture in this country, we have to know that parents and family take on a whole other dimension because it's no longer mother and father. It's the single mother trying to raise her kids, or the abuelita, the grandmother, trying to raise her grandchildren of the daughter that's out working every day, or combinations thereof. So the idea of family and unity and promoting that is very important to what we do.
Yes. Do you have a role model that you look up to in particular?
Well, I mean, my parents have been my role models all my life because, I mean, two young kids leaving a country, you know, another country without knowing the language. I mean, just on faith alone, you go and you know that things will come out the way that God intended, you know, it to come out. I mean, I have many other role models, people I have worked with for so many years. Film director Leon Ichazo, whom I've, you know, learned so much from him, and he's done his way to create new positive role models in the films that he has made. And his father, Justo Rodriguez Santos, you know, he was a poet, laureate poet, you know, and just so many people.
Like Roberto, it sounds like you're networked as well. You have a network of people who are trying to make a difference.
Well, even right now at home, my mother-in-law lives with us. She's 89 years old, and she's been the role model for both my children and for myself, because when her parents came over from Mexico during the revolution, her mother said to her husband, "We must leave this place. We are going to be in danger, and our family's going to be in danger." This is the woman taking control of her family and safeguarding it for the future to bring it into this country to make sure that they had a life.
Roberto, Jorge, our half an hour is...
It's over.
Finito. I can't thank you enough for sharing your insights, especially your enthusiasm and passion for your work in the media. You guys, and the gals too that you work with, are building bridges, and you're building bridges of understanding so that our culture, for all of its differences, can share in the good things that we all treasure. God bless you both for what you're doing.
Thank you, Father.
And I'll be back right after this message.
Speaking out is not only a right, it's a responsibility. Send for Make Your Voice Heard. In Spanish, that's Haga Oír Su Voz. Mail your name, address, and zip code to the Christophers, New York, New York, 10017. Make Your Voice Heard will be sent to you in English or Spanish without cost or obligation. So write to the Christophers, New York, New York, 10017.
The United States is, and always has been, a nation of immigrants. Individuals from all over the globe come here seeking a better life for themselves and their families. With every age, different people immigrate to our country. They come from South America, Europe, Asia, from every continent around the world. And each of these immigrants has a unique personal and cultural contribution to make. Sometimes we may be resistant to new ideas or different traditions. But we need to remember, our country is a success because of our cultural diversity. With each new person that arrives on our shores, we as a nation and as a people become that much richer. My friends, let's learn to celebrate and appreciate the traits that we have in common along with the qualities that make us unique, because it's the combination of the two that makes us truly who we are. Thanks so much for joining us today, and until next time, God bless you, and please remember, you do make a difference.
This program has been brought to you by the Christophers, New York, New York, 10017. Better to light one candle than to curse the darkness.